When I share my memoirs, some people seem to think that I have had more than my share of challenges, dangerous situations in my life. However, when I reflect on the past, I see the situations, which may have been stressful at the time, as a collection of amusing stories that have made me who I am. I've always thought that a person's attitude, rather than their actual experience, is what determines their level of happiness. I've seen people in the last stages of cancer who have been very positive, and others with minor health issues, like a lady who had a fungus on her big toe, who was very self-focused and angry. During my years of working in home support, I was exposed to a variety of complaints from folks who tend to see a glass as half empty rather than half full. When they started to complain with their woe is me rant, I would often say, "You have 5 minutes to complain before we move to a positive conversation." If I said that with a smile on my face, as I looked at my watch, the conversation usually turned around in less than the allotted time. I don't seem to be ruled by the same level of fear and worry that I see in others. Originally, I actually couldn't think of anything to write about on the topic of danger. I feel like I have lived a pretty sheltered life. Our country is not at war, and I was raised in and continue to live in a family free from addictions to drugs and alcohol. I have shared stories of operating and working on farm machinery when I was too young and too short to do so safely, and being responsible for unpredictable farm animals in the fields and barns. I learned how to milk cows, chop wood, use hand and power tools, climb ladders and shingle roofs. Safe or not, those were the roles of a farmer's daughter. I remember seeing sparks shooting out of electrical plugs and listening to the phone ring during thunderstorms. Red-hot stovepipes on the occasions when the chimney was in fire have left an unforgettable image in my mind. My siblings and I worked hard and played hard. One evening I got knocked over by big waves and felt the pull of riptide when a sandbar let go. I've had anaphylactic reactions to some foods and medications, and have experienced stroke-like symptoms after consuming aspartame. I now read labels and no longer chew gum. There are a couple of hurricanes I remember from my East Coast days. During the first one, I got my nose broken while attempting to secure a barn loft door. Years later, my husband and I were sleeping in a tent trailer on the beach. The winds almost disconnected the beds from the trailer, and the next morning the high water line was up to our doorstep. The couple in the next campsite were floating on their air mattress inside their tent. One day when I was driving school bus in the Ottawa area, I followed the path of a tornado, which had damaged buildings and had torn up trees. I've spun out on ice more than once and was caught in whiteouts due to drifting snow. I never drove while drunk or stoned, but I did get myself home in the midst of an asthma attack. And I drove myself to the hospital in the early stages of labor. I had a few sketchy rides while hitchhiking in my university days, and some awkward situations with some male clients during home support visits, but for the most part, I have felt safe. I have been shown a way to escape or was given words of wisdom when I needed to talk my way out of a bad situation. The promise in Scripture that states, "Do not fear, for I am with you," is real to me. What a comfort I have found in that simple truth. I think that fear is a bigger danger than anything that can hurt the physical body. Fear can emotionally cripple people, shutting them down and stealing their joy. The old saying, "Sticks and stones can break your bones, but names can never hurt you," was quoted to me as a child, but even then I could see that it was a lie. The media is full of information, true and false. These things bring depression and hopelessness into people's lives. I know people with eating disorders and mental illness, as well as some who have turned to prescription or self-medicating drugs and alcohol. And I've even known some to have committed suicide. Years ago, when I was still watching TV, I realized that a lot of what was displayed in the screen had desensitized me. One evening, half a lifetime ago, when I was responsible for organizing a potluck dinner, I saw a young man wandering around near the venue. There had been a car accident, and even though I noticed that he wasn't totally coherent and not appropriately dressed for the weather, I continued on with my agenda. I later realized that he was probably in shock and in more danger of losing his life than the people who were physically injured when the cars crashed. I was so annoyed at myself. This was a real situation, not just something on the idiot box. I quit watching TV, especially avoided anything with violence, and which first and foremost meant that I quit listening to and watching the news. I know some people think that I am weird and uninformed, but without trying, I have been exposed to a lot of current events and turmoil caused by opposing views. I remember a neighbor who watched the news regularly telling me that she would come over and inform me if anything important happened. I lived beside her for years, but she never came to enlighten me. When a very depressed person told me that I was like an ostrich with my head in the sand, I just smiled and said, "At least I'm a happy ostrich." A wise friend once told my family to deal with the giants that come your way, but do not go looking for more. And recently I heard a quote that was from Billy Graham saying, "Take one day at a time. Today is the tomorrow that most people worried about yesterday."